I'm Amanda, and everything I knew about my life fell apart one Thursday evening. My husband, Jimmy, walked in with a young woman named Olivia, and he dropped the bombshell. He wanted a divorce. In disbelief, I asked if he was serious, and he coldly confirmed it, declaring the house belonged to Olivia now. I couldn't comprehend it. This seemed like a cruel plot I never imagined for myself. Despite the shock, I managed to question him, but Junie laughed it off, claiming it was a long time coming and Olivia understood him unlike I did. As the reality sunk in, I realized Jimmy, the man I thought I knew, was now a stranger. In the midst of the pain, I saw his true colors, cold and callous. I confronted him, accusing him of throwing away our marriage for a fling. He dismissed it, saying Olivia was his future, and I was just the past. Facing this betrayal, a sense of clarity emerged. Jimmy was willing to destroy everything for his newfound love, and I found the strength to stand my ground. I agreed to the divorce but asserted my right to the house and vowed not to go down without a fight. As they walked past me, disgust shivered through me. Yet this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of my fight for dignity, for my child, and for what was rightfully mine. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions, memories tainted by Jimmy's betrayal. Amidst the turmoil, a plan formed. I wouldn't let him walk away unscathed. It wasn't just about a house or a marriage. It was about my fight for justice and reclaiming what was rightfully mine. I was taking charge of my own story, with Miss Johnson by my side. I had the law on my side, and Jimmy's arrogance was about to crumble. The legal battle ensued, and I reveled in every moment of it. Jimmy, who thought he could easily replace me, was now realizing the consequences of underestimating my strength. As we went through the legalities, it became clear that the house he promised Olivia wasn't solely his to give. The land it stood on, inherited from my father, was rightfully mine, and he had no claim to it. Armed with this knowledge, I felt empowered. For the first time since his betrayal, I was in control. Miss Johnson meticulously drafted the divorce papers, ensuring my rights were front and center. It wasn't just a legal battle, it was personal. I was determined to make Jimmy understand the gravity of his actions. As I signed the divorce papers, there was a mix of sadness for the life that was ending and resolve for the new chapter beginning. I had become the author of my own story. The day I filed those papers marked a turning point. Fear and exhilaration mingled as I walked out of the courthouse, feeling the weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer a victim in Jimmy's cruel play. This was my story now, and I was ready to show him that he couldn't discard me like yesterday's newspaper. The tables were turning, and I couldn't wait to see the shock on his face when he realized the consequences of his actions. This was not just a legal victory. It was a triumph over his ego, pride, and everything he took for granted. I was turning the page, and Jimmy was becoming nothing more than a cautionary tale in the story of my life. Miss Johnson and I met to discuss our next move. In her office, with the afternoon sun casting long shadows, we plotted the downfall of the man I once loved. Miss Johnson warned me that Junie would fight dirty, and I needed to be prepared. I know, I replied, steeling myself. But I have something he doesn't know about the land this house is on. It's mine, inherited from my father. Miss Johnson's eyes lit up. That changes everything. He can't claim the house without the land. We can serve him an eviction notice. The idea of Jimmy and Olivia receiving an eviction notice from the home they thought was theirs brought a bitter sense of satisfaction. It was more than just a legal move. It was a statement. I was not going to be discarded and forgotten. Let's do it, I said firmly. The day the eviction notice was delivered, I imagined the shock and anger on Jimmy's face. This was just the beginning of his karma. For every tear I shed, for every sleepless night, he would pay. But the battle was far from over. Fueled by his ego, Jimmy wouldn't go down without a fight. He called me, his voice a mixture of disbelief and fury. Amanda, what the hell do you think you're doing with this eviction notice? He barked. Just reclaiming what's mine, Jimmy. You should have thought twice before deciding to give away something that wasn't yours, I replied, my voice calm but firm. This is ridiculous. "You're doing this to get back at me, aren't you?" he accused. "It's not about revenge, Jimmy. It's about justice. You can't just take what you want without consequences." I countered Jimmy. He fell silent for a moment, and I could sense the gears turning in his head. He had underestimated me, thinking I would quietly retreat. But I was fighting back, and I wouldn't stop until I had what was rightfully mine. "This isn't over, Amanda. I'll fight this," he finally said. "Go ahead," I responded, unyielding. "But remember, the law is on my side, and I'm not backing down." After hanging up, I felt a surge of power. For too long, I had let Jimmy dictate our lives. Now, the tables were turned, and I was in control. I wouldn't relent until justice was served. In the weeks that followed, it became a chess game of legal maneuvers and emotional confrontations. Jimmy, caught off guard by the eviction notice, launched into desperate attempts to sway the situation in his favor. However, with each move, he only entangled himself further in the web of his own making. One evening, as I sat in my living room, the phone rang. Jimmy's name flashed on the caller ID, and I braced myself for another round of his pleading and anger. "Amanda, you can't do this to me, to us." Jimmy's voice came through, tinged with frustration. "There's no us anymore, Jimmy. You made sure of that," I replied, my voice steady. "This is madness. You're going to leave me homeless over some petty revenge," he argued. "Petty? You call destroying our family petty?" I shot back. "This isn't about revenge, Jimmy. It's about consequences. Your actions have them, and now you're facing them." Jimmy's voice turned softer, almost pleading. "Amanda, please. Let's talk about this. We can sort it out for old time's sake," Jimmy pleaded. I almost laughed at the notion of sorting things out for old time's sake, as if our years together were mere tokens to be traded in times of trouble. "There's nothing left to sort out, Jimmy. You made your choices, and now you live with them," I said, cutting him off. He was silent for a moment, and I could sense his desperation mounting. "You're enjoying this, aren't you? Seeing me suffer?" "It's not about enjoyment, Jimmy. It's about justice. You need to understand that every action has a consequence, and this," I paused, "this is yours." I hung up before he could respond. My heart was racing, but there was a sense of empowerment in standing my ground. For too long, I had let Jimmy dictate the terms of our life, but now the balance had shifted. I was no longer the passive wife he thought he could easily discard. In the following days, the reality of his situation seemed to dawn on Jimmy. His calls became less frequent, his voice less assured. The man who had once held all the power in our relationship was now scrambling to salvage what little he could from the ruins he had created. Olivia, in the background of this drama, was a constant reminder of the catalyst for all of this. However, I knew her part in Jimmy's story was coming to an end. She was just another pawn in his game, and soon she would realize it too. I lay awake at night, the silence of the house a stark contrast to the chaos of my thoughts. Amidst the turmoil, there was a growing sense of clarity. I was doing the right thing, not just for me, but for our child. In this battle of wills, I was not just fighting for my rights, I was fighting for our future. As the legal battle intensified, Jimmy's veneer of control began to crack, and the house. The house he had intended to gift Olivia was slipping through his fingers, and with it, his imagined future. His desperation became more evident with each passing day. One afternoon, as I reviewed some documents from Miss Johnson, my phone buzzed with a message from Jimmy. It was an invitation, or rather a plea, for a meeting. Against my better judgment, I agreed. It was time to face him, not as his wife, but as the architect of his downfall. We met at a quiet cafe, a neutral ground amidst our war. Jimmy looked haggard, the strain of the situation etching deep lines on his face. As he saw me, his expression shifted from relief to something darker. "Amanda, thank you for coming. We need to sort this out," he started, his voice shaky. "Sort this out? You mean find a way for you to weasel out of the consequences?" I replied coldly. He leaned forward, his eyes searching mine. "I know I've made mistakes, but this This is too much. You're taking everything from me, everything. No, Jimmy, I'm taking back what's mine. You made your choice when you decided to betray our family. Now I'm making mine, I said firmly. Jimmy's frustration boiled over. You're heartless. Do you enjoy seeing me like this, struggling, begging? I met his gaze unflinching. Heartless. You dare call me heartless after what you've done. This isn't about enjoyment, Jimmy. It's about justice. You can beg all you want, but it changes nothing. He slumped back in his chair, defeated. So what? You're going to leave me homeless, ruin me. If that's what it takes for you to understand the gravity of your actions, then yes, I said. You thought you could discard me without any repercussions. You were wrong. Jimmy looked away, the reality of his situation finally dawning on him. What about Olivia? He asked, almost as an afterthought. Olivia? She's your concern, not mine. Though I doubt she'll stick around once she realizes there's nothing left for her here, I replied as I stood up to leave. In a last-ditch effort to salvage something from the wreckage, Jimmy reached out. Amanda, please. I pulled away, my resolve unyielding. Please, Jimmy, it's too late for that. You've made your bed, now you lie in it. Walking away from that cafe, I felt a surge of liberation. The chains of our marriage, once so constrictive, were now broken. I was free from Jimmy's betrayal, free to rebuild my life on my terms. In the wake of our meeting, Jimmy's attempts to sway the situation became increasingly frantic and futile. His calls, once demanding and arrogant, were now laced with desperation. The tables had turned, and he was slowly coming to terms with the magnitude of his mistakes. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, my phone rang. The familiar jingle brought an involuntary sigh. It was Jimmy again. Bracing myself, I answered. Amanda, you can't do this. We can talk about this. There has to be another way, Jimmy pleaded, his voice cracking. Another way? After everything you've done, you think there's a way out for you. I responded, my voice laced with incredulity. It's not just about me. Think about our child, Amanda. This affects them too, he argued, playing what he thought was his trump card. Our child? The same child you so easily dismissed in your plans with Olivia. No, Jimmy, this is about justice. This is about making sure our child knows that actions have consequences, I retorted. There was a pause on the other end, a silence filled with unspoken realizations. Jimmy had always underestimated me, but no longer. I was no longer the woman he thought he could control and manipulate. You're going to regret this, Amanda. You're pushing me too far, Jimmy said, his voice a mixture of anger and fear. Regret? The only regret I have is not seeing your true colors sooner. You're not being pushed too far. You're just finally being held accountable, I shot back. Jimmy's frustration boiled over. You think you've won, don't you? You think you can just take everything and leave me with nothing. This isn't about winning or losing, Jimmy. It's about righting a wrong. You made your choices, and now you live with the consequences. It's that simple. I replied firmly. The call ended with Jimmy's defeated silence, a stark contrast to his usual bluster. He was finally feeling the weight of his actions, the cost of his betrayal. In the following weeks, the reality of Jimmy's situation became increasingly apparent. His financial resources dwindled, strained by legal fees and the loss of the house. Olivia, ever the opportunist, began to distance herself as Jimmy's fortunes declined. The final court hearing was a formality, a legal stamp on what was already a foregone conclusion. As I stood outside the courthouse, the decree in hand, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure. Jimmy's downfall was complete, a direct result of his own actions. He had sown the seeds of his destruction, and I had merely ensured they grew. Turning my back on the courthouse, my heart felt lighter than it had been in months. The future lay ahead, undefined but promising. I had fought for justice for myself and my child and emerged victorious. The months following the divorce and Jimmy's eviction from the house brought profound changes. Our home, once tainted by the shadow of betrayal, slowly transformed back into a sanctuary of peace and strength for me and our child. Each room was cleansed of Jimmy's presence, his memories replaced by new joyful ones. Jimmy's downfall continued in a downward spiral. Without the house and struggling financially, he was forced to move back with his parents. The last I heard, Olivia had left him, her affections as transient as the wealth she had hoped to secure. As I tended to the garden, a task that had become a source of solace, my phone rang. The screen flashed Jimmy's name, a reminder of a chapter I had firmly closed. Curiosity piqued, I answered. "Amanda, it's Jimmy." His voice came through subdued and almost unrecognizable. "What do you want, Jimmy?" I asked, my tone indifferent. "I wanted to apologize for everything," he said, the words seemingly difficult for him to utter. "Apologies don't change the past, Jimmy. They don't undo the hurt," I replied calmly. "I know," he admitted. "I've lost everything, Amanda. Olivia's gone. I'm living with my parents. I've hit rock bottom." "That was your doing, Jimmy. You made those choices," I stated plainly. There was a heavy sigh on the other end. "I know. I thought you should know. I regret it, Amanda. I regret it all." His words, laden with remorse, didn't bring me the satisfaction I had once thought they would. Instead, there was a sense of finality, a closing of a chapter that had caused so much pain. "Your regret is your own to live with, Jimmy. I've moved on. I suggest you do the same," I said, ready to end the conversation. "Amanda," he started but trailed off. "There's nothing more to say, Jimmy. Goodbye," I said and hung up. As I put my phone away and turned back to my garden, a sense of peace washed over me. The past was behind me, and ahead was a life filled with possibilities, a life of my own making. The garden bloomed around me, a testament to new beginnings and growth. Our child laughed in the background, a sound that filled my heart with joy. This was my world now, one where betrayal and pain had no place. Jimmy's chapter in my life was over, but mine was just beginning. A chapter filled with strength, resilience, and the love of those who truly mattered. I hope you guys enjoy our video. To watch more interesting stories, subscribe to our channel. Thank you.